So our circuit overseer, Brother Giepel, is going to present the material, What Marks the Bible as Authentic? Brother Giepel.
Have you read the book by Professor so-and-so? Have you seen the article by Reverend so-and-so? Have you read the book by Reverend? It will change your life. Let me tell you, it is something else. Have you read this? Have you read that? Have you heard about this? Oh, there was Nostradamus. Oh, his predictions. Oh, my. No, I haven't read all those. However, we were sharing something today from the Bible about what Jesus said. Oh, the Bible, that's a book by men. Oh, who are all these other people? Ah, yes. See, there's a contradiction in many cases. So people come along and they try to discredit, to undermine, and to have people not trust what the Bible says. They say that it's not authentic, that it is not really the Word of God, it's not inspired, and that it's just simply a book with parables and stories and fantasies. However, the Bible is indeed the most widely distributed book in the world. It is in more languages than any other book, either in whole or in part, and indeed it can be counted on and depended on. And many have spoken out in support of the Bible's authenticity and recognition of its value. In fact, many of the presidents of the United States are and were avid Bible readers, and were very, very familiar with it, quoted it, used it, and put confidence in it. Presidents and other famous people around the world. Interestingly enough, too, a little bit of history, American history, is that many of those presidents, in fact, the majority of them, really had nothing to do with or wanted to have nothing to do with organized religion, with churches. So reading the Bible, they got to see a difference, and that was quite remarkable. So there are powerful elements at work to try to discredit the Bible. Critics, modernist clergy, evolutionists, philosophers attack its authenticity, invent theories to supplant faith in the Bible, even dismissing a need for belief in God Himself. The God-dishonoring conduct of professed Christians who claim to follow the Bible has also brought incredible reproach on the Bible, both inside and outside of Christendom. You see, there are many things that are done today that are in the news, become known, part of history, whether it's things that are going on now or in the past that are done in the name of God, in the name of Jesus, with Bible in hand, and sometimes even quoting and making reference to some specific verses, chapters, and texts that are totally contrary to Jesus' teachings and what the thrust of the Bible really says. And they take things out of context. And this has put many people in a situation to say, well, they really don't want anything to do with it. Jehovah's Witnesses, on the other hand, boldly proclaim that the Bible is indeed authentic, inspired, and an interesting word, that it is the infallible Word of God. Infallible. Now, there is a major religion out there, Catholicism, where they claim that their leader, the Pope of Rome, is infallible in his teachings on morality and doctrine. Isn't that quite interesting? And they have had to do some fancy explaining over the many centuries when there have been problems and contradictions and changes in what they've had to do. Jehovah's Witnesses, on the other hand, do not claim infallibility. We discussed that to some degree on Thursday, that we see the outworking of prophecies as we go along, and changes and adjustments are made as needed. And Jesus was constantly training and adjusting His apostles in what they taught because of those same reasons. So Jehovah's Witnesses' teachings and organization are based solidly on the Bible, and there is a consistency and a wholesome teaching that comes through as a result. So to Jehovah's Witnesses, the Bible is unique. It is the most outstanding and beneficial book. In fact, as true Christians, They champion the Bible's authenticity. Isn't that an interesting word? To champion it, to put it to the forefront, to say that it is the best, the only. Now, Jesus Christ himself set the pattern and the example for us. I invite you to turn to Matthew, the 4th chapter. We had this in our discussions last week in some of our studies and material that was at the two-day circuit assembly. But if you turn with me to Matthew, the 4th chapter, we see Jesus himself. You get into holiday seasons, especially now, sometimes at Easter, and people are focused on Jesus Christ. They claim to be in any case. But then when it comes down to his teachings and seeing the precedents and the patterns, it really becomes quite interesting to see how he viewed things, how he dealt with them. So here's Jesus in the beginning of his ministry, Matthew chapter 4, starting in the first verse. It says, "Then Jesus was led by the Spirit up into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil." Wow, be directly tempted by Satan the devil, one-on-one, personal? That's quite a challenge, is it not? See, sometimes we can just read the words, but there's a powerful situation here. Verse 2, "After he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, then he felt hungry." Now, you could just read right through that also. How long does it take people in Iowa to become hungry? What happens if we miss a meal? Oh my, our personalities can change. Here's Jesus, 40 days and nights, and nothing to eat. So here's Satan the devil coming at him directly under those circumstances in a weakened condition. Have you ever gone without food for a while? Leave me alone. Don't bother me. I need to eat. We get a little attitude. We know, we set our priorities. We draw that line in the sand. Food comes first, see? But here, Satan the devil coming at Jesus under those circumstances. Now, what was going to sustain him? What was going to get him through this challenge? 3rd verse, "Also the tempter came and said to him, 'If you are a son of God, tell these stones to become loaves of bread.' But in reply he said, 'It is written, man must live not on bread alone, but on every utterance coming forth through Jehovah's mouth.'" Now, Jesus set a pattern. He used the Word of God to counter Satan's attack. Satan the devil is quick, see? So now he's going to throw Jesus a little curveball, as we would say. So in verse 5, "Then the devil took him along into the holy city, and he stationed him upon the battlement of the temple, and said to him, 'If you are a son of God, hurl yourself down, for it is written.'" Here's Satan the devil using the Bible, twisting it, turning it, see, trying to maneuver and manipulate Jesus. But he comes along and he says, "For it is written," he says, "He will give his angels a charge concerning you, and they will carry you on their hands, that you may at no time strike your foot against a stone." And Jesus set the record straight. Jesus said to him, "Again it is written, you must not put Jehovah your God to the test." See, he took it out of context. Jesus set the matter, made the right application. He identified the issue, the problem, and brought to bear the right principle to correct the situation. Sounds familiar, does it not? See, that's how we use the Bible. We should be, see, in our teachings and in our activity. And of course, a third time, 1, 2, 3, here we go. "Again, the devil took him along to an unusually high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory. And these things I will give you if you fall down and do an act of worship to me." Gee, an act, just one. "Then Jesus said to him, 'Go away, Satan, for it is written,'" a third time, "'It is Jehovah your God you must worship, and it is to him alone you must render sacred service.'" So 3 strikes, Satan was out. Then the devil left him, and look, angels came and began to minister to him. They were watching, were they not? How would Jesus handle this? He used the Word of God, is what he did. And that's what's impressed many people, why they've come into God's organization. Had questions, had issues, wanted to know about this or that, and the brother or sister, the Jehovah's Witness, took the Bible and opened it and showed them from there. And we have an experience on that in the concluding talk. So these are the kinds of things that Jehovah's Witnesses do in following the example of Jesus. As Christians, see, following him. And we try to make the shoe fit and follow that pattern. Now that sounds basic, does it not? Yet, out in the world, sad to say, these people seem to feel that and believe and have been taught that Jehovah's Witnesses do not believe in or even love Jesus Christ. See? And yet we can take and follow his pattern and his precedents. As his followers, we want to follow his pattern. True Christians should be doing that on an organized level, as a congregation. So we invite you to take your Bible and turn to 1 Timothy chapter 3. Now there's just a reference. It's not the real point of the verse, but it's a reference to the role, to the function of what an organized group of people should be doing regarding the Word of God and how all this is supposed to fit, instead of what we see going on in churches today. So in 1 Timothy chapter 3, we'd like to use verse 15. It says, "But in case I am delayed, that you may know how you ought to conduct yourself." How we carry on, you see, as Christians, people, in God's household, which most people would like to claim to be a part of, God's household. That's a nice family closeness, which is, in case you were ever wondering, the congregation of the living God. Okay? And then what role does it have? A pillar and support of the truth. A pillar and support of the truth. Not to teach by contrast what men say, their philosophies, their ideas. Well, you see, things are different nowadays. Times have changed. The Bible is old. The Bible is out of date. Oh, yeah, you just got to understand these things. God has, He understands our weaknesses. We have to live in the times that we have. See the rationalizations that come along there. But the Christian standard, that is in black and white, which did not allow for that, said that to be a pillar and support of the truth, as found, as we like to say, in almost any situation, whether it's religiously or otherwise. That's what we have in black and white. See, that therefore becomes, see, the guide, the principle, and the law. Christian ministry for Jehovah calls for reasoning on the Scriptures, being able to reason, to work with them, just as Jesus himself did. So we uncompromisingly uphold the Bible as authentic. We know from experience that the Bible is the only reliable guide to pleasing God, and it has enabled us to learn about Jehovah himself and of how to properly render sacred service to him. It provides a sound basis for belief and faith. It gives us solidarity. It gives us motivation. It makes us rock solid and comfortable in knowing where we are in the stream of time, what is going on, what the future holds, and what the truth about God and his Son really are. And we have firm evidence showing that the Bible is indeed God's authentic word. And there are undeniable marks to this. For example, several specific areas that we'd like to make reference to. There's the candor of the Bible writers, that it's a strong reliability factor concerning why we can depend on it. Now, candor. Nowadays, you may have heard, there's just a rumor around, I understand, in Iowa, that there's some politicians in the state of Iowa at the present time. Some different things that are going on. And if you ever listen to it, most people turn them off very quickly because they have this spin. What are they saying? Maneuvering around and so on and so forth. All kinds of different rationalizations, minimizations, and so forth, and attacking others, and then when they have issues brought to them, and so forth. And they put what's called a spin on things. In fact, the world, there are people out there, they recognize it so much, there's even a TV program, I believe, that's called the No Spin Zone, see, supposedly to undo it. But some people might say it has its own spin. So you have all of that that's going on. However, when it comes to using the Bible and to see its candor, there is no spin on it. The Bible writers were very blunt and very honest about themselves. See, when it comes up with a political leader, well, what about your drug use? What about this, the girlfriend, the boyfriend, the children, see, so on and so forth, past things. Very seldomly are they up front. See, although nowadays in the internet age and so forth, many of them have discovered that they better be up front because it'll come out anyway. So that's what's happening too with many other teachings. People are beginning to actually focus on some Bible references because they know Jehovah's Witnesses are out there, and they bring it to the forefront. Truth about certain things like holidays, God's name, Bible standards, and things of that nature. But in any case, there's the candor of it. Now, you can take a man by the name of Jonah. And here was a man who was given a direct commission by God, told to go and preach gloom and doom, the warning, the message of condemnation to a city called Nineveh. Nasty people. Oh, they were ugly. Pagans. Oh, yeah. Violent. He was told, go up there by yourself, and you had to deal with this. And there was a lot of people up there, maybe close to 1 million people or so. And he didn't want to do it. So he went the other way and got on a boat and took a cruise out into the Mediterranean somewhere. So he went on a cruise instead. Well, when it was all said and done, he wound up with a fish story that would make any Iowan jealous. He learns his lesson, comes back, make a long story short, and he goes back and he does what he's supposed to do, preach the message. And then, lo and behold, he's shocked, the people change. God withholds his judgment, and Jonah gets an attitude. He was upset. He was waiting for fire and brimstone to come down. He was looking to have this done after everything he'd been through. He was disappointed, and Jehovah had to teach him another lesson regarding a simple plant, a tree, a bottle gourd plant is what it was called, that provided a little bit of shade. And Jehovah taught him a lesson. It was embarrassing. Now, how would you like that said about you? You know, what you went through. You didn't do what God told you to do, and how you had to be bluntly and embarrassingly taught all these issues and be corrected by him. Well, how do we know about it? Because we have the book of Jonah, but Jonah was written by Jonah. He's the one who fessed up, as we say. He's the one who came to the forefront, and he recorded the whole thing regarding his own failings and so forth. Just as one interesting example. There's another one that people might be familiar with. It's Moses, the greatest of all human prophets other than Jesus Christ himself. Now, he had been very concerned and upset about what was happening to his people, the Israelite nation, under the bondage, the slavery, the abuse of the Egyptians, the horrors of what went on there. Well, to make a long story short, he had been grieved over this, and then Jehovah came along and said, the time has come. Moses, you're the one that's going to lead the people out of that situation, and you're going to be the one to go face to face and deal with the Pharaoh of Egypt himself. Put him in his place, and I'm going to back you up. Now, a lot of other people come along and they say, hey, that sounds good. I'm ready for this, finally. Now, here Jehovah gave him a direct commission, told him he'd helped out. How would you feel about that? Ready to go. Here I am, send me, as Isaiah would say. Well, Moses, he comes along, and there are 3 pages in the Bible where he argues with God on why he can't, won't, is unqualified to do it. And then all the things he had to go through. And finally, Jehovah, in his humility, that we learn about, see, as in Watchtower studies, is that lo and behold, he comes along, and he had that quality, and so he condescended to give Moses his brother Aaron to go along and act as a spokesman. So he had a little bit of family support there, you see. Now, how do we know this? Moses wrote about it. Moses himself exposed that. Here he was, this leader, this one who would take the nation out of there to lead them as a human, and had the 10 Commandments and all the miracles and all the things that went through him. And yet he had those failings. And there were other things to come along later on, such as why he did not enter the Promised Land. So the candor of the Bible writers. So that's one factor. Another is the integrity of the Bible itself, is attested to by writers and early Christians who bore witness to facts knowing that they could be condemned to death on the basis of their testimony. There was Stephen, the first Christian martyr, who quoted prophecy and who made reference to the hypocrisy of what was going on in the teachings of the Jewish nation there. And it cost him his life, but he stood up for what was right. Another area of consideration is the internal harmony that adds to the proof that the Bible is authentic and inspired. It's internal harmony. Now, this is despite the fact that the Bible was penned, written down, by some 40 different individuals over a period of 1,600 years. Now, how in the world could you keep a story like that straight? Some say that the whole thing was a conspiracy, or that there's inconsistencies in it. But when you examine it, it all actually falls right nicely into place. Now, I don't know, some of you may have here in our part of Iowa, young people have done this, maybe when some of the ones who used to be young remember back, is that there was a game called telephone. I don't know if it's called that here, but you'd get a line of people, you could put them along, 10, 12, 15, 20 people, and you put them in a row. And then you get the first person and you say to them, "Tell Jane to go to the store and buy some bread. Pass it down the line." And by the time it gets to the last person at the end, and they say, "Well, what was the message?" It said, "Bob is a no-good rotten bum." Had nothing to do with Jane buying bread. It gets twisted and turned by the time it gets to the end. So how about 1,600 years, 40 different men, ones who didn't even know each other, men who were not learned, educated. They were not working in most cases with written things that they could go back and document and check and quote and cut and paste, as we would say in the computer world. See, they did not have that capability. See, the scrolls were in the temple. They'd be read. It was verbal. And yet they kept the whole thing together in a harmonious message. Quite outstanding from all their different backgrounds. So just part of it. And indeed, one of the most outstanding facets of the Bible is its consistency from beginning to end in a particular area. Now, for example, many, when we used to be in school, you did what was called a book report. Some of you remember book reports. So, a basic book report, I don't think they do much of this in schools anymore, but the title of the book, Holy Bible. Author, Jehovah God. Theme, what's the book about? What's the point? What's the main message? Well, for the Bible, if you ask a Jehovah's Witness, now it'd be fun to ask other people what's its theme, and you watch their eyes go da-da-da-da-da-da, ding, 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 just like the slot machines at the casinos. Now, I've never seen it myself, but that's what I've been told about, saw it on TV, see, and so forth. See, they're trying to come up with something. A theme, the Bible. They claim to believe in it. Okay, so what's the theme of the Bible? Well, you can ask a Jehovah's Witness, and as we like to do in the Western world, we can chop things down, and they can give you a one-word answer. Kingdom. Now, if they're real wordy that day, they might give you 2 words. God's kingdom. The kingdom. Now, if you really want to expand it, one of the many expressions that is in the various publications is you could say something along the lines of, and here's where it's expanded a little bit, is that it is the vindication of Jehovah's sovereignty and the sanctification of his name by means of the Messianic kingdom. And you see, that pulls in a whole couple of other issues, does it not? And it's more expansive. See? Now, that doesn't have to be the way it's quoted and so forth, but that's more of the idea of what's really entailed in the kingdom hope. But the point is, that is the theme of the Bible. Now, we just did a book report without reading the book. Of course, you never did that when you were in school, right? Or kind of skimmed it. When I was in school, I discovered Reader's Digest condensed books. That helped a whole lot. But in any case, how do you get the theme? It's got to go from Genesis to Revelation. The 66 books beginning to end. And so you can go from Genesis 3:15 to Revelation chapter 22 at the end, and you see the outworking of that theme, that it is directly referenced, it is promised, it is prophesied of, the layout, the format, the precedent, the entire concept of the kingdom government arrangement under Jesus, undo what was lost in the Garden of Eden, and yes, to vindicate Jehovah's sovereignty and to sanctify his name. Quite outstanding, see, when you read through and see the thrust of that whole book. Now, what did they learn in church today? It'd be a whole lot different, didn't they, see? Here, we've been able to pull that together. But you can go from Genesis 3:15 to Revelation 22, and you have the outworking of that theme in some shape, manner, or form in all 66 books of the Bible. Quite outstanding. So that's one of the proofs of its authenticity. What marks it as being consistent as the Word of God and having a message for people, the message being that theme. And then, of course, how it all fits in, how we qualify, how it works, all the detail that is indeed very important. In addition, there's the practicality of the Bible's righteous principles and moral standards that testify to its divine inspiration. Families, husband, wife, children, honesty, all the moral issues that come to bear, subjection, orderliness, structure. See, things that they just keep going around and around and around on in the world with all their philosophies, but the Bible's message has remained consistent, including childbearing, husbands and wives, relationships that are all there. All of that is there. Now, you had even a famous philosopher who made, or psychologist or child psychologist, there was one who came along and said children should not be disciplined and things of this nature. You might stunt them in one manner or another, and there's all kinds of variations on this and what have you. And then after a whole generation has been brought up with this worldly thinking, contrary to Bible teaching, he said just before he died, oops, I think we didn't get that one right, after they saw the fruitage of what had come to bear. See, but the Bible standard has remained consistent. So we have those righteous principles that help along those lines. There's also the accuracy of the Bible account, including geographic, geologic, and chronological records that support its authenticity. For hundreds of years, they didn't think that there was proof that there was a man by the name of Pontius Pilate, the one who ordered the execution of Jesus Christ. See? But the Bible's record was definitive. It was clear. They went and dug up some things and found coins and eventually other artifacts that supported that this man did exist and who he was, and that the time period, just like the Bible said. Just as an example of that. There's also so many other things regarding Bible locations, the mountains, the seas, Mount Sinai, Mount Hermon, see all these other things, Mount Moriah, Zion, the city of Jerusalem, all the history that's attached to that. So all of that being brought to bear. There's also the Bible account of the origin of races and languages that is accurate. And they do all this research, and even though people have come along and tried to say that, there was this group here, they evolved from fish, and this group over here, they came from maybe a primate of some kind, and then there's another group that maybe they came from some sort of flying bird or dinosaur, and all this evolution and all these other things. Well, now they got this thing called DNA, you may have heard of it, and genetic mapping, and they've dug into that. And lo and behold, they've come along, and it all focuses back to the cradle of civilization, right where the Bible said it should be. And that, like it or not, everybody's related. They're all related, see? So the DNA has proven that out. So there's many different ways to establish the Bible's authenticity. There's also the historical accuracy of the various Hebrew and Greek scriptures that has been confirmed. In fact, if you take your Bibles, I invite you to turn to Matthew. And here at this time of the year, people are kind of interested in these things, at least some claim to be. But if you go to Matthew chapter 1, here's some of the historical accuracies that we're able to bring to bear. For example, in knowing Jesus' background, if you were to ask people about Jesus, whom they claim to believe in and love, what religion was Jesus? That's a rhetorical question in this setting. He was Jewish. What religion was his mother? No, she wasn't Catholic or Baptist. She was Jewish. His stepfather, Joseph, Jewish. What nationality were they? Jewish. See, all of that goes back to that Israelite, Hebrew, Jewish history heritage. And there's a lot that's involved with that. The Jewish people knew there was to be a Messiah. Had different terms and references. Now we refer generally in English, the Latinized form of Messiah, which is a Hebrew word, is Christ. Bible teachers know that. We use it interchangeably. See? So Messiah and Christ mean the same thing. One's Hebrew, one's the Latinized, Romanized form of that. So here you had that there would be they did not know that his name would be Jesus. They did not know he'd be born of Mary, see. But there were many, many other things that came to bear. They knew his heritage, the history, had to come through the tribe of Judah, through the house of David. That they knew. Therefore, the Jews kept extraordinary, detailed records regarding genealogies, because they were waiting for this Messiah. And they wanted to be able to identify he had to fill these specific qualifications, among other things. And one of the biggest was this family tree, this family line of descent, his heritage, his roots, as they say. See? So that had to be there. And they kept detailed records at the temple, where it would be the safest, and they could verify it religiously and politically. So Matthew, chapter 1, here he is. He's a tax collector, detailed man, accounts. See, all of that had to be there. Chapter 1, verse 1, the first thing Matthew does, the book of the history of Jesus Christ, son of David, son of Abraham, establishes right off that he is of that line of descent. And then proceeds from Abraham right on down through Isaac and Judah. You have in the first couple of verses, comes on down to verse 6, Jesse became father to David the king. David became father to Solomon by the wife of Uriah. Solomon became father to Rehoboam, on down the line. Verse 16, Jacob became father to Joseph, the husband of Mary, of whom Jesus was born, who was called Christ. There was his legal right through the family head, Joseph. See, of the tribe of Judah. That line of descent was established. And then 17, he breaks it down into components where you could analyze it, all the generations then, from Abraham until David generations, and from David until the deportation to Babylon, 14 generations, and from the deportation to Babylon until the Christ, 14 generations. So he broke it down into equal segments. They could count it, they could analyze it, they could put it side by side, they could do whatever they wanted with it. The scribes, the Pharisees, the priests, the Jewish religious leaders, whom Jesus exposed and condemned for their hypocrisy, false teaching, and abuse of the people, were looking for anything to discredit Jesus. This would have been the first thing they looked for. They couldn't touch it. It was documented. Never did they attack Jesus' validity, his heritage, his line of descent. It was too well documented. So it was established. He was right there. See, if he hadn't fit that to a T, as they say, they could have discredited him and shunted him aside, gotten rid of him. Didn't work. He didn't have the right heritage. He didn't fit the legal requirements. But they couldn't do that. Go to Luke, just as a cross-reference, now that we've done that. And this was something very critical to the Jewish people. That's why they have a problem today. I know you don't run into too many Jewish people, but there is really a problem when it gets down to it, is that they're still awaiting the Messiah. They never accepted this man, Jesus. So technically they're still waiting, but how would they ever identify him? All the records were lost. The temple at Jerusalem was destroyed in 70 CE. All the records are gone. And there's been such an intermarrying and mixing with generations and histories and national and ethnic groups for the 2,000 years since that time period that it is virtually impossible for them to document that. And they've admitted it. But that's another story. But in Luke chapter number 3, you get the heritage down through the line of what's going on here. It takes it a different way in verse 23. Furthermore, Jesus himself, when he commenced his work, was about 30 years of old, being the son, as the opinion was, of Joseph, the son of Heli, and so on and so forth. And this traces it another way, goes right on back through Abraham, goes back through David, Solomon, all of that. And in verse 28 takes it right back to Adam and being the son of God. A double cross-reference, see, to Jesus' heritage and history. The historical account being so accurate. And what makes that interesting, again, is because of Jesus' Jewish history, that this is what they were looking for. He had to fit the bill. It had to match up perfectly. The historical accuracy, therefore, confirmed. The Jews never challenged the accuracy of the Bible's recorded history of their nation as a whole. All these other things with Moses, the prophets, the Isaiahs, the Jeremiahs, the Daniels, all of that being established. Many ancient non-Jewish writers accepted the Bible also as accurate. All the historical figures from back there would quote these different Bible accounts. And events recorded in the Christian Greek scriptures are recognized by contemporaries and confirmed by ancient inscriptions and artifacts. Another interesting point is science. Another reference point. As you turn to Isaiah, the 40th chapter, the book of Isaiah has an interesting reference here on a scientific point. Now, the Bible is not a science textbook. It is not designed to teach science. But whenever it touches on a scientific fact or point, if it's the inspired Word of God, if it's authentic, it has to be accurate. It can't be a hit or miss thing. See, it can't be one of these things that maybe it's right and maybe it's wrong, or they went with the philosophy of the time, the thinking. So in Isaiah chapter 40, kind of a fun point in verse 22, there's a reference that's made about the earth, just in passing, so to speak. It says, "There is one who is dwelling above the circle of the earth, the dwellers in which are as grasshoppers, the one who is stretching out the heavens just as a fine gauze, who spreads them out like a tent in which to dwell." The circle of the earth. So the Bible said the earth was what shape? That it was round. Well, for hundreds of years, hundreds and hundreds of years, the scientific teaching in school was the earth was flat. And if you went too far, you'd fall off the end. Now, some went to school. You might have remembered an old rhyme. It's in fact a national holiday in this country, federal holiday, is in October. They observe the birthday of a man by the name of Christopher Columbus, who sailed the ocean blue in 1492. You may have remembered that, you see. Well, he is given the credit for proving that the earth was round by actually going out there and making a trip, see. So there it was. But you see, Isaiah made the recording that the earth was round 2,000 years before Columbus. So Columbus could have saved himself a trip if he'd read the book of Isaiah. How about that, you see? Now, kind of interesting, too, you get these critics. You get people who like to take pot shots at the Bible. They like to undermine it. See, all these things that we've been talking about. People who like to come along and, yeah, but. You may have heard that phrase before. Well, what shape is a dinner plate? Now, people in Iowa are pretty familiar with dinner plates, aren't they? See? So it's flat, and in most cases, not all, they're round. So some people say it says circle, but a dinner plate is flat. So is a flying saucer, a frisbee. See? So they try to attack it on that basis. That doesn't prove anything, that it's just because it says circle. However, the Hebrew word that is used there, chugh, C-H-U-G-H, and it's the way we put it into our alphabet, is a definition of really a sphere, globe, or ball, which is different than a flat surface like a pancake, a flying saucer, or a frisbee, or a dinner plate. See? So it is a sphere. So it denotes that it is a circle from every single angle. Or geometrically speaking, you could say that a sphere or a ball is technically an object whose radius is equidistant from the center point, the nucleus, from all angles. Isn't that interesting, you see? And in fact, the Hebrew word that's used denotes depth to it in its cross-reference to a scripture in Job. If you use the reference Bible, it'd take you there, that shows depth or vault-like, something you could step into, that it was not just a flat surface, used interchangeably. So that's kind of interesting, just as a scientific point. But just because sometimes they throw this curveball at us, take a pot shot, come up with some little thing that maybe we've never thought of ourselves or remember reading, you see, that all of a sudden, oh, what are we going to do? How do you explain that? Well, thankfully, we have wonderful organization and reference materials that help us out. There's also one other important aspect to make reference to. If somebody were to ask you a quiz question such as this, what is the single most outstanding proof of the Bible's authenticity? We've spoken about numerous things here. What is the single most outstanding proof? You could give a simple answer to label it. It's prophecy. defined sometimes as history written in advance, before it happened. So, prophecy. Now, basically speaking, and our Bible teachers might be familiar with this, is that there are three kinds of prophecy. Fulfilled prophecy, prophecy that is currently undergoing fulfillment, prophecy yet to be fulfilled. It's just a time element on the prophecies. Well, let's take our Bibles and go to Daniel, the 8th chapter. Now, this prophecy happens to be so outstanding that the critics, who want to take the pot shots at the Bible, have claimed that it must have been written after it happened. But the Dead Sea Scrolls and many other documentations have established that that was not the case. Now, here we are at election time and caucuses and things of this nature that are going on, and they're trying to figure out who's going to win an election, who's going to win a preliminary poll, what party will win, and that's just on local levels, and they struggle with that, plus or minus margins of error and so forth. That's just for an election within a short period of time, in maybe a week or two, in our case here, or for where we live, in terms of what people are doing. Now here in Daniel, it wasn't just the next election. It was the world powers on the stage. Monumental, earth-changing, historical events that would be occurring. Now, this was written at the time of what's been identified in terms of Bible prophecy and history as the third world power, Babylon, considered invincible, sitting high and mighty, see? And then, lo and behold, what was going to happen? Who would ever follow them? Well, nobody. They were the superpower. There was no way anybody could do them in. Well, the prophecy was given, and it was given in a vision denoting animals. Now, we just had in our material here in the book study, again on Thursday evening, is that different animals are used to represent governmental administrations. And they even adopt them officially in some cases as logos or symbols. For example, as we had Thursday, you've heard of the American bald eagle, the Lion of Britain. They even have it as a logo. They put it on tails of airplanes, commercial planes, things of that nature. Then there's also the bear of Russia, China, the dragon, and many others. There's even sports teams that adopt these things. Maybe you've heard of rams and dolphins and things of that nature, and bears and things of that nature, see? So that's not unusual. But here we have in Daniel, the 8th chapter, starting in verse 20. Now here he's going to give the synopsis of the whole thing. The ram that you saw possessing the two horns, in this case, and we have to condense it down for the sake of our discussion, stands the kings of Media and Persia. Oh my, didn't even think about it. Who are they? Where are they coming from? Those people, they're inconsequential, but they would become the world power. The next one to follow behind Babylon would conquer it, take it over. And the hairy he-goat stands for the king of Greece. And as for the great horn that was between its eyes, it stands for the first king. You ever hear of Alexander the Great in history? And he'd come behind them. And that one having been broken, so that there were four that finally stood up instead of it. So his horn would be broken off. His life came to an end prematurely. They figure 33 and a half. He had no heir, no one to follow behind him. And so what happened to his empire? There are four kingdoms from his nation that will stand up, but not with his power. It went to his four generals, because he had no son or even daughter to take it over. The Bible spells it out. It's not, I wonder who this could be. Let's take a guess at it. Well, maybe it was, like a Nostradamus does. They make it fit. They pull in all kinds of weird things, and these people on TV, and they sound very authoritative. And, well, they're getting there. Is what it comes down to. But you see, the Bible definitively lays it all out and goes into even further detail if you go into the Bible accounts. This was world powers. This wasn't just who wins the next election. Covering hundreds and hundreds of years. Outstanding, is it not? So fulfilled prophecies regarding these ancient nations and present conditions all lend to the establishing the confidence that we have that the Bible is God's Word and that it is authentic, depended on. There were other prophets, the fall and eventual desolation of Babylon that would come later. It didn't say Babylon would be destroyed in this particular prophecy. Other prophecies said it would be gone. It would never be rebuilt later on. See, Babylon stayed around for hundreds of years. Peter wrote a book of the Bible from Babylon hundreds of years later. See, but it would be laid to desolation. Now you can go out to a place called Iraq, and it's buried under the sand out there. Nobody inhabits it. Archaeologists go out there once in a while and dig something up, and that's it. A man by the name of Saddam Hussein said he was going to rebuild it, and a funny thing happened to him on the way. There's a succession of the world powers, as we mentioned, and there was Jesus' prophecy of a great tribulation, a time of trouble before the end of this system of things. So when it's all said and done, pay attention to the authentic Word of God. The Bible's counsel is teaching, and teaching is beneficial. It is rewarding. Get to know the author of the Bible by taking in the life-giving knowledge of He and His Son. The Bible prophecies show that with the end of this system nearing, the time left to act is running out. So we invite you to study the Bible with us to prove to yourselves, as the Bible itself says in Romans 12:2, the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So by demonstrating faith in the good news, you will benefit yourself, your family, for eternity in the future. Yes, have you read the book? The book by the sovereign Lord God Himself, the one that gives hope, gives promise, helps us understand where we are in the stream of time, the one that helps us to have better, fulfilled lives in the days that we have. Yes, the Bible is the authentic Word of God.
Thank you very much, Brother Giepel. We really enjoyed that discussion this morning, and we look forward to another public talk next week.